What's up everyone? Welcome to Sir Hunt's Reviews. My name's Mark, and in this video, I am joined by the one, the only, In Deep Geek. We are going to be discussing a brief history of House Targaryen. We're going to be touching on multiple different topics, so don't get your hopes up on thinking that we're going to be focusing in on one subject. Robert, do you want to tell everyone where they could find you at?
Yeah, thanks a lot. This is, as always, an absolute pleasure to be here. My name's Robert. My channel is In Deep Geek. So if you want to check me out afterwards, I cover Game of Thrones and Westworld. And if you're excited about Westworld Season 2 as I am, then do come over and have a look. I'll be doing live streams and videos on that all the way through the season. But great to be here.
Nice. Hell yeah. Westworld is less than a week away. I can't wait. I'm in the process of rewatching the first season, and I would have me and Robert would do a stream about that, but I feel like he would just trump my knowledge and I would look like I can't, to be completely honest, as of right now, it's hard for me to even remember all the characters' names. So I got a lot of, research to do on that, but looking forward to those Westworld videos. And I think me and him, we have a collab coming up, but let's go ahead and jump into it. And links for Robert's channel are down in the description as well. It all starts off with, I say that like I'm reading a fucking story, but what I meant to say was, House Targaryen of Dragonstone is a great house of Westeros. And I'm actually getting this information from the Game of Thrones wiki pages, which are linked down below in the description. You can go and check those out for yourself, and go and give them a peruse. House Targaryen of Dragonstone is a great house of Westeros, and was the ruling royal house of the Seven Kingdoms for 3 centuries since it conquered and unified the realm. Before it was deposed during Robert's Rebellion and House Baratheon replaced it as its new royal house, the few surviving Targaryens fled into exile to the free cities of Essos across the Narrow Sea, currently based on Dragonstone of the eastern coast of Westeros. House Targaryen seeks to retake the Seven Kingdoms from House Lannister, who formerly replaced House Baratheon as the royal house following the destruction of the Great Sept of Baelor. House Targaryen sigil is a 3-headed red dragon on a black background, and their house words are fire and blood. Robert, I'm just to kind of take that out of I guess robot language, because I don't even understand that. Do you want to break that down a little bit more, like kind of explain what that means? I guess I don't know.
Yeah, sure. So House Targaryen was one of the noble houses in the Valyrian freehold, which was the biggest empire the world has ever seen. And they were not actually one of the biggest houses. They were quite like a medium-sized house. And a few years or a century before the great destruction of the Valyrian freehold, then the Targaryens moved out. They got a vision, they moved out, and they went to Dragonstone. So they moved away from their home. When the doom of Valyria happened, that exploded. All the other old Valyrians were gone, and the only true Valyrian noble house, there are some other smaller houses around, but the only true noble house left were the Targaryens on Dragonstone. They hung around on Dragonstone for a while, 100 years in fact, and then suddenly they decided, or Aegon, who became known as Aegon the Conqueror, Aegon I, decided that he wanted to take over Westeros. So him, his 2 sisters, 3 dragons, they basically completely routed everybody in central Westeros. They didn't manage Dawn to start with. They didn't conquer the north, but the north bent the knee. And then for 300 years they ruled before, in Robert's Rebellion, that was when they finally got kicked out. So we've got 3 parts to this. We've got the first part where we get the Targaryens, just a kind of a middle-ranking family in Valyria. The second part where they're the most powerful family in the entirety of Westeros. And then the third part, which is what we've been reading about in the books and seeing on the screen, is when the remnants of the Targaryen family are in exile.
Which is actually ironic, because Robert was only able to claim the throne through his grandmother Rhaella. She's a Targaryen, so the Targs spread their seeds everywhere. And a lot of people are debating, like, I mentioned briefly before that I think somewhere in the line there was a Targaryen that mated with a Stark before Jon and Daenerys. Now, there isn't any actual written proven history, but it had been wanted to be done before. It would have been the Pact of Ice and Fire. My cat is climbing in the cabinet right now. Robert, can you pick up with that the next part real quick? I'm gonna go take care of the kitty cat.
Absolutely. So where we're at now is that after Robert's Rebellion, there are only a few of the Targaryens left. We've got Viserys, and we've got Daenerys. Now, they are the only two Targaryens we know of in the books. Obviously, there's another one, another claimant who claims to be Aegon, and then of course we get Jon. So we're right down to the last few true Targaryens. And the reason why we're down to the last few true Targaryens is because, yes, they, as you said, they spread their seed wide, but they intermarried. They did not allow the true line of Targaryens to spread very far. So it was actually quite easy to kill off most of the true-born Targaryens.
Yeah, it's almost like not only did they become weaker as a people for all that inbreeding, but also, they kind of backed themselves into a corner by making it so that I feel like the whole main thing behind it, obviously George is very anti-war sentiment. One of his first stories and how he got out of Vietnam, which I actually just saw an interview with this where he mentioned it, was he got out because he basically was like protesting the war, and he wrote this essay a few years before the Vietnam War began, and he was talking about, I hate war, fuck it. So they allowed him to not participate in that because of it. So I think one of the heavy themes is, like George was trying to show you, is that these Targaryens put themselves, like, I feel sorry for them, obviously, but they also caused it upon themselves, and like saying that maybe, I think by the end of Game of Thrones, there's not going to be a one ruler to rule everything. There kind of already isn't. Like, the king takes advice from his council, but I mean even more so, like all of the Seven Kingdoms, if they're still alive, they should be ruled by a governing body, like almost like a council, like what they have now, but not just one person dictating everything. But yeah, so kind of, is there like your favorite event from what we do know? Because we know that Fire and Blood's coming out soon, so we don't need to sit here and sort of like go over every little thing. But is there something in particular that from the Targaryen history that you want to discuss? Like, I'm honestly a big fan of the Blackfyre Rebellions. I don't know if you maybe want to talk about the first one.
Yeah, so for those who don't know, that Fire and Blood obviously is the history of House Targaryen that George R.R. Martin has been writing. The first half of it, I suspect, is going to come out this year. He's kind of heavily hinted on that. In terms of the Blackfyre Rebellions, these there were 4 of them, or possibly 5 if it depends how you count them. These come out from the 2 facts that go all the way through the history of the Targaryens, that they marry each other and they practice polygamy. So they have a Targaryen king will quite often have several wives and formal mistresses and lots of children, and that they are all interrelated very much. Now, the start of this is when the last king there died, then you have this problem every single time of who should succeed them. Now, normally this is because they practice what's called male preference primogeniture, which means like the eldest male. Normally this is quite obvious, but the last king there, Aegon the Fourth, I think it was, who, like many of the Targaryens, went a little bit, let's say, less sane than he was to start with. And one of the things that he did was he recognized all of his bastard children. And this meant that all of them suddenly thought, hey, so I'm now a proper Targaryen and I can actually have a claim to the throne. And one of these, who was his favorite, Daegon, he gave to him the sword, the Targaryen sword, which is called Blackfyre. Now, this is really important because this was the sword which was passed down from generation to generation. Sorry, when I said Daegon, I meant Daemon, obviously. Sorry. From generation to generation, from king to king. And so giving him this sword almost said, you're my favorite and you're the person I want to be the king. And so when Aegon IV died, we suddenly have this position where the natural heir was not the person who had the sword, and therefore we have this fight of the one against the other who actually should be ruling the kingdom. So that's how it started.
Yeah, I was about to say, it's funny, this Aegon the Fourth sounds like the greatest prankster of all time. Like, he's like, you know what? I'm dying. I'm not gonna have to deal with this shit. And not only did he, name one of his, like, if I'm not mistaken, honestly, like, unintentionally caused the start of the downfall of House Targaryen, because after these wars, and like Robert said, there's like 4 Blackfyre Rebellions, 5 depending on how you count it. I guess the first one would be the Greens versus the Blacks, but whoever, if I'm saying something wrong, feel free to correct me down in the comment section, because I know everyone's going to do that anyway. But it's after all of these Blackfyre Rebellions are done, they pretty much wiped out all of their dragons, all of their members of their house. So when we get to King Aerys the Mad King, right before the start of our story of Game of Thrones, he's like the last, one of the last ones, and then his son is another one of the last ones, like, that are in a position to take up the kingdom and fight for it. You know what I mean? So it's almost like they caused their self to rot from the inside out, starting with these Blackfyre Rebellions, which is kind of why I think it would be a good place to start. But just to kind of go over a little bit more of what Robert was saying, let's see. I'm once again on the World of Ice and Fire.westeros.org. Will be linked down below in the description. You can go and take it for yourself. I'm gonna be reading verbatim here for a little bit. In addition to his unacknowledged bastard son by, and this was talking about King Aegon IV, by Dana, King Aegon IV Targaryen had his marriage to his sister Daenerys, a true-born son named Daeron, born in 153 AC, and a daughter, Daenerys, born in 172 AC. He also had them legitimized. And then in 182, Aegon knighted his bastard son, Daemon Waters, after he ended up winning a squire's tourney at the age of 12. And Aegon publicly, that's pretty much what you were saying. This is when Aegon bestowed him with Blackfyre. So it's almost like, like you said, telling, it's like, hey, this is my favorite son. But let's pick up with the rule of Daeron a second. Do you want to kind of snag it from there, Robert?
Yeah. So the thing about Daeron was that he was, in many ways, he was a good king, because he was quite a cultured man. He was quite learned. He was, I think today we call him quite bookish. But what he wasn't was a great fighter. He wasn't a great leader or all the rest of it. And so the problem was that that the longer he kept on in this kind of role, the more people were starting to see, actually, there's somebody else here who is looking a lot more kingly, and he was starting to attract a lot more of the sort of the fighters of the court. Added to which, Daeron also, Westerosi politics are complicated, but he started to grow very close to Dorne. He had a lot of Dornish people in around court, and this created a lot of tension as well. So what we've got going on here is we've got these two characters who are very, very different, and they grew to not just dislike each other, but hate each other over time.
Yeah, it's interesting that, we have opposites going all the way back. Like, this is 100 and almost 20 years before the start of our story. So it's interesting that we have these opposites, going into the start of a war, similar to, like, you could say Daenerys and maybe Cersei. You know what I mean? Cersei is an evil bitch, and Daenerys is a beautiful queen who, could also be called an evil bitch, I guess, if you look at it from the difference. But the duality of opposites go deep in this story. Just to sort of summarize what ends up happening when it breaks into open rebellion, the first Blackfyre Rebellion officially broke out in 196 AC. It only lasted a little bit short of a year, but it divided all of the entirety of the Seven Kingdoms. Daemon's decision to claim the throne had been made very quickly, and word spread everywhere that Daeron's court, and ended up reaching Daeron's court, that Daemon meant to declare within a month. It had been suggested by Archmaester Marion that Brynden Rivers, aka Bloodraven, another of Aegon IV's bastard sons, was involved with the news reaching Daeron. The King's Guard was sent to arrest Daemon, but with the aid of the Master-at-Arms of the Red Keep, Daemon managed to escape imprisonment. Daemon reversed the colors of House Targaryen, taking his own sigil, a black dragon, on a red field. And this led to his nickname actually being the Black Dragon. And Daeron was known as more of the Red Dragon. And then he actually ended up starting to make his own money, which is like an ultimate fuck you to his brother. Over the course of the war, battles were fought between the rebels and the loyalists, among other places, the Vale, the Westerlands, the Riverlands, and the Reach. So this is very similar to the War of the Five Kingdoms. The war was all over the entirety of the continent of Westeros. Half of the realm declared for Daemon, but not all the houses were eager to pledge their full support. Notably, houses Hightower, Butterwell, Oakhart, and Tarbeck gave support to both Daemon and Daeron. Sounds like they're trying to play both sides of the war. Just, sounds very similar to what Americans do sometimes, our American government. We like to arm both sides of the war. While others were willing to betray Daemon for Daeron, the thief Quickfinger, which is hilarious, George, with these fucking names, man. The thief Quickfinger. Doesn't that sound like a sexual move or something? Oh, did I really just say that? Oh man, demonetization. Let me bleep that out. That whole part's gonna be attempted to steal dragon eggs from Daemon, but he ended up getting quelled. Sir Quentin Ball ended up attacking, and remember, we had just mentioned him before. He's actually the person who chained Daemon, the Red Dragon. Or, no, sorry, the Black Dragon. Sir Quentin Ball attacked the Westerlands, killing Lord Lefford at the gates of Lannisport, and then defeating Lord Daemon Lannister in turn. After crossing of the Mandor, Sir Quentin slew all of Lady Penrose's sons, except for the youngest, whom he spared as a favor for the lady. Lord Leo Tyrell participated in the first Blackfyre Rebellion, and he fought on behalf of House Targaryen. He won notably victories in the Reach against Daemon Blackfyre supporters. During the war, King Daeron II came to consider his hand to the king, Lord Ambrose Butterwell, to be ineffectual, and in the end, Butterwell's loyalty was questioned. Shortly before the Battle of the Redgrass Field, the final battle of the first Blackfyre Rebellion, Butterwell was replaced by Lord Hayford, a noted loyalist. A key general, Fireball, was slain on the eve of the Battle of the Redgrass Field by a common archer. Meanwhile, Lord Bracken had gone across the Narrow Sea to hire forces, but storms delayed the return of him and the Mirish crossbowmen he had hired. Now, this is interesting. The Brackens and the Blackwoods are still kind of fighting to this day in the books. The Battle of the Redgrass Field is probably one of the things, and like we're going kind of off topic here, but I feel like this would be one of the most insane events if they were to do a spin-off series and it was based on the first Blackfyre Rebellion, which I can't be biased, or I don't know what is biased meaning you're favoriting something, or is it unbiased meaning you're not favoriting? I don't know. What is that?
Both of them.
Okay. All right. But either way, House Targaryen is my favorite house. So I feel like, I'm biased in the sense that I want the spinoff to be more House Targaryen, but it also makes even more sense because George is writing these complete histories of fire and blood. But then you also have the sense that like he could be done with it. Because remember, the reason why he said he didn't want to do Dunk and Egg as the prequel series or the spinoff or whatever you want to call it is because he hasn't finished writing those. And he knows that when the show started, I guess he planned to be maybe mostly finished with writing the books, but he isn't. So now you're having the show reveal major secrets and page exploding events on TV show, and it's kind of going to take away from the novels a little bit, the same way that people who read the books when they watched the show, the novels took away from the events of the show, because obviously but now that it's caught up, George doesn't want to repeat that mistake again. So I feel like the Blackfyre Rebellion would be a safe choice because there is a lot of information out about it, but there's still a lot of mystery, and George is writing, Fire and Blood right now, so you would think that he would have that completely finished, so it wouldn't be like, and it would also help in promoting the sales of that book. But I feel like, Robert, I want you to let us know what happened at the Battle of the Redgrass Field, and do it in your best narrator voice, like how you were singing Queen when we were doing our vocal warm-ups.
I love singing Queen. Well, I will happily read out from this in my best narrator voice. So the final battle of the first Blackfyre Rebellion was the Battle of the Redgrass Field in late 196 AC. Lord Leo Tyrell's forces couldn't gather quickly enough to arrive in time for the Battle of the Redgrass Field. House Arryn did participate, as Lord Donal Arryn led the vanguard of the Targaryen forces. However, Daemon Blackfyre shattered his lines, leaving the Loyalists in peril until Sir Gawain Corbray of the Kingsguard arrived with reinforcements. Sir Gawain Corbray and Daemon Blackfyre came face to face during the battle. Their duel, in which Daemon wielded the Valyrian steel sword Blackfyre. Remember, this is the sword which almost started it all, and that's where he got his surname from and where we get the name of the wars from. He was wielding Blackfyre, and Gawain was wielding the Valyrian steel sword Lady Forlorn. This battle is said to have lasted for nearly an hour before Daemon gained the upper hand. Corbray was wounded, but Daemon dismounted, preventing Corbray from being trampled, and commanded that he was taken off the field. In the meantime, we get Bloodraven, Brynden Rivers, who, as always, is one step ahead of everyone else. And he's got his archers, who are known as the Raven's Teeth. And he'd captured and assumed a high position, a great vantage point atop the Weeping Ridge, which overlooked the battlefield and allowed them to then rain arrows down among Daemon and his commanders. This actually was the turning point of the whole battle, because Daemon's heir Aegon died, followed by Daemon himself. And then when Daemon's second son, Aegon's twin brother Aemon, took up Blackfyre, he was slain as well. So you've got not only Daemon, the pretender, the leader of this rebellion, dead, but also his two sons dead. And then obviously the rebels then began to rout. But Aegor Rivers, so this is another one of these bastards, claimed Blackfyre, this sword, and he rallied the rebels and he led a charge against a Bloodraven and against the Raven's Teeth. And in the ensuing duel, Aegor took out Brynden's eye. So whenever we see Bloodraven with the pictures and he's only got one eye, this is how that happened. He got one eye gouged out in that battle. However, although Bloodraven wasn't the greatest of warrior, Prince Baelor arrived with a host of Dornish spearmen and Stormlanders, while his younger brother, Prince Maekar, rallied the remainder of the van. As such, Baelor crushed the rebel army against Maekar's shield wall, pushing them together, called the Hammer and the Anvil. So they basically squashed them between two forces and destroyed them like that. So what we know is that we don't know how many people were in the battle, but we do know that 10,000 men died and many were maimed and wounded. So this was a massive battle. Lots of the rebellious leaders, Daemon himself and his two sons, were gone, but crucially, Aegor claimed Blackfyre the sword and makes an escape.
Nice. It's complicated. Like, there's so many. They have so much similar names. Like, that's why I can't remember what interview it was with George, but someone was talking about his naming scheme, and sometimes he just will sit there and just, literally change around one letter and fucking change the way you pronounce it, and that's pretty much like the new name. So yeah, it's kind of confusing there, but you did a very good job of breaking that down, good sir. Let's discuss the aftermath real quick of what sort of happened, after the end of the first Blackfyre Rebellion. So King Daeron's punishment of the rebels was way more extreme than was previously expected. Honestly, this is very similar with Daenerys. Like, I knew she was going to burn some people. I just didn't think she would do it the way she did it. Remember, she's like, if anyone has problems, stand up. You know what I mean? Or don't kneel, basically. And this is what happened. And she takes out Sam and Sam's brother and his father, Randall and Dickon. And this, I kind of want to touch on it again. I want to get your opinion on this, Robert. I actually had a question submitted to me by one of my patrons, and they said, do you think there's going to be a big backlash or like a wedge almost between Sam and Jon because Daenerys did, burn his family almost, not his mother? I honestly feel like he maybe doesn't hate his brother as much as he hates his father, but he definitely hates his father. And I don't feel like, in my opinion, that his father being killed by Daenerys is going to cause a wedge between Jon and Sam. However, I do think Jon is going to look at Daenerys a little bit differently. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it'll actually be a problem for both of them. We've not really seen so much of Jon's reaction to that, to be honest. Now, Sam had no love for his father. But I think you will find increasingly the people who are around Daenerys, and this is Sam and Jon, but also Tyrion and Varys, are going to start looking at incidents like that and actually start questioning her. So I don't think that it's going to be a question of causing a wedge between, say, Sam and Jon. I think it's a potential wedge between Daenerys and her advisors, because people are questioning her judgment and, frankly, whether or not she's like the Mad King.
Yeah, because the look that Tyrion gives her during that whole scene, he's just like, is she serious? Is she really going to do this? I think he was looking at it more so when Daenerys has Jaime and Cersei in that same position and she burns them. You know what I mean? It's like, I think I think that's, and this is, we're getting super off topic here. I'm going to reel it back in, but I feel like Tyrion, almost all of his motivation in the plans was like, let me put on a good front in front of Daenerys, but I don't want to see my family die. But let me, show my loyalty, but then I don't want my family to die. So this is why you have him meeting. Well, I guess Bronn set up that meeting, but I don't know. Do you think, and we'll get back on to the aftermath of the Blackfyre Rebellion after this, but do you think part of Tyrion's motivation was to keep his family safe? You know what I mean? Like some of his strategy?
I think so, but at the same time, I think that he has got great love for his brother. I don't think that he has got the same great love for his sister. I think if she died, he would not weep for her. I think, however, when he was growing up, and this again, we'll come back to the topic in just a moment. But for me, Tyrion, when he was growing up, you have to look, who did he think was on his side? And actually, all the way through the most formative moments of his life as he was growing up, the one person he thought he was on, well, he also had an uncle who disappeared. But other than that, the one person he thought was on his side was Jaime.
Yep.
And so I think that he feels this great bond with Jaime that he doesn't with pretty much anyone else in the world.
Yeah, and that's ironic. You reminded me of Tytos. If I'm not mistaken, he's the uncle that taught him how to tumble. Tyrion is a fucking gymnast in the books, and I guess like Dan and Dave were like, okay, that's not practical. I looked it up on YouTube, and there are certain smaller people who can do backflips. One of them is a wrestler, and I think I've done a video, a Tyrion breakdown video, where I put up a picture of a smaller person doing a backflip in a wrestling ring, and it badass. It's pretty cool to see them. But in the novels, yeah, man, he flips all over the place. It's nuts. And he actually learned that from his uncle, the one that you had just mentioned. I think it's Tytos. No, Tytos is Tywin's father. So
yeah, it's Geryon or possibly Geryon. I'm not entirely sure how it's pronounced.
Yeah, Geryon. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, Geryon, the one who disappeared going to look for Bright War. Yeah. So that was Tyrion's favorite uncle, and like you were saying, his one ally throughout his whole life was his brother. But on the TV show, he does make a good point to say that he hates his sister. That's very well clear. It's made very obvious to us. But he also says that her one redeeming quality is the fact that she loves her children. He knows that she's gotten progressively insane as the series has gone along, and part of that is due in fact to that she's losing her children. He knows that he had a hand in sending Myrcella to her death. You know what I mean? He didn't have a hand in killing her, but he basically sent her there. It was by his orders as Hand of the King to send her to Dorne. So I think that guilt is ultimately going to weigh on his mind, because not only did he kill his father, but he killed Shay. So he may not feel guilty about those two things, but the third thing, having a hand in an innocent Myrcella, having a hand in her death by sending her to Dorne in the first place, which he did out of spite for Cersei, that's just like one guilt thing that lays on top of the cake. So I personally think that he would cry a little bit if Cersei were to die. You know what I mean? Like, he would feel something just because he knows that she only got into the position that she's in because it's been getting progressively worse. I honestly feel like all of the Lannisters would have turned out differently if Joanna had survived. What do you think, man?
Yeah, I think you're probably right. It's they are all in one way or another reacting to how they were brought up by their father. You see, Tyrion is actually in many ways very like his father. He's very calculating. He's very clever. He's very political. He's very much like that. Jaime is very much trying to be this great soldier, this great leader, and all the rest of it, because he's trying to live up to what he thinks this kind of lofty ideal is, in a way, certainly early on. And Cersei wanted to be a man. She kept on saying it all the way through, because she wanted to be the ruler, and that was because she saw her father there. If she'd been brought up, say, in the Tyrell household, and she saw how the Queen of Thorns was being quite an empowered, badass woman, then perhaps she wouldn't have developed in the same way.
That's deep, man. That's totally deep. So yeah, it's like she idealizes what she knows, which is why she loved her father so much, why she wanted, like, just like you said. That was perfect, man. All right, so let's wrap this back around to the aftermath of the Blackfyre Rebellion. Number 1. All right, so King Daeron's punishment of the rebels was way more insane than everyone had expected him to do. Those who had supported Daemon lost their lands, which for a split second I thought that said hands. I was going to say, God damn, bro. They lost their lands, their titles, their wealth, and were basically forced to give members of their family as tribute, almost like a hostage situation. This is very similar to what Ned Stark has with Theon being brought up in his household. It's almost like that's a hostage because the Ironborn rebelled and Ned was forced to go and snuff that out. They were offered sort of as tribute. But Lord Gorman Peake lost 2 of his 3 castles for his support of Daemon's cause, while Sir Eustace Osgrey, whose 3 sons Edwin, Harold, and Adam had died upon the Redgrass field, had to give up his daughter Alysanne as a hostage. If I'm not mistaken, isn't this the same Alysanne that is actually the grandmother of Robert Baratheon?
Possibly.
I want to click on her.
My knowledge there.
Yeah, I think that is. I want to say that. No. She ended up becoming a Silent Sister and then died at the age of 20 from the Great Spring Sickness. All right, but there is a Queen Alysanne that is, or an Alysanne that Robert is. That's how he got his claim to the Iron Throne. But anyway, all right. The first Blackfyre Rebellion left its mark upon Westeros for many years to come. Asking a man whether he had fought for the Black Dragon or the Red was considered a dangerous question. Aegor Rivers was able to recover the sword Blackfyre from the battlefield and escaped to the Free Cities, together with Daemon's widow and remaining children, eventually ending up in Tyrosh. In exile, Daemon's descendants continued their struggle for the Iron Throne, resulting in 4 more rebellions, the 2nd, the 3rd, and the 4th Blackfyre Rebellions, and the War of the Nine Penny Kings, which... That's what you were saying earlier, Robert. If it depends on you counting that one, 5th one, the Nine Penny King. Absolutely. Actually, Barristan Selmy fought in that. As one of the peaceful attempts during the Great Council of 233 AC, these attempts led to the arrest of Daemon's 2nd son, Daemon, and the deaths of his 3rd and 5th sons, Haegon and Aenys. Almost looks like that says Anus, as well as the death of his grandson, also named Daemon. Come on, guys. Daemon's last male descendant, Meleys, was slain during the War of the Nine Penny Kings by Sir Barristan Selmy, ending the Blackfyre threat. Singers ended up immortalizing the Battle of the Redgrass Field in a song about the hammer and the anvil, referring to Baelor and Maekar's strategy. Great Spring Sickness, which began in 209 AC, created the possibility for a 2nd Blackfyre Rebellion to arise. Many of those who had been taken hostage by King Daeron II had died, and so did King Daeron himself. Daeron's heir and the hand of the king, Prince Baelor Targaryen, died shortly before during a tourney mishap at the tourney at Ashford Meadow. Baelor's 2 sons, Valar and Mataras, had perished in the spring sickness as well, leading to the coronation of Daeron's 2nd son, the bookish Aerys I Targaryen, who named Sir Brynden Rivers as his hand. Under these circumstances, did Daemon Blackfyre's eldest surviving son arrive in Westeros from Tyrosh, Daemon II Blackfyre, and preparations for the 2nd Blackfyre Rebellion began in 211 AC. So these wars are so ongoing, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, Jon was born in 282 AC, and that's sort of like our Jesus moment. You know how we have BC and AD or whatever, but it's come on, Jon is very similar to Jesus Christ. Like there's so many similarities between Jon and Jesus, other than the cool hair. Oh man, Mark is just offending religion. We definitely getting demonetized. I'm gonna cut all that out. But yeah, were there any of your favorite moments from maybe one of the Blackfyre Rebellions that happened after the first one that you want to briefly talk on, or do you kind of want to just talk about a little bit more?
We can get on to the rest of the Targaryen history in just one second, because I think it'd be really useful to have a sort of quite an overview. But in terms of these other ones, the stuff you're talking about at the end, when you get the Great Spring Sickness, and then you get this, which got rid of a whole load of the people who'd been the main protagonists in that original Blackfyre Rebellion, and then you get the tourney at Ashford Meadow, and then you get the sort of the stopping of the 2nd Blackfyre Rebellion. These things you can actually read about in the Tales of Dunk and Egg, and if you've never read them, they're also written by George R.R. Martin, and they're about the Aegon, who became Aegon V later, but when he's going around the country as the squire to a knight who became Sir Duncan the Tall, and you see these events happening not through the eyes of the great, as we so often do, sort of the leaders of the land, but actually people who are just sort of going around and attending events. And so if you want to get a little bit more information about what it actually felt like at the grassroots level, including, as you mentioned earlier, about them minting their own coins. This is really important because this was trying to set up a rival state, as it were. And it was the fact that those coins are still there and still in use was kind of like a symbol of, hey, I'm one of the rebellious people. You can tell because I'm using one of these coins. And that was the kind of thing at a ground level that I found absolutely fascinating. And you also see a little bit of Bloodraven in action, which is absolutely fascinating, because all the way through this era, this is Bloodraven time. This is when he gained his reputation for having 1,000 eyes and one, knowing everything that was going on around the entire continent and even beyond.
Yeah, it's awesome. I'll if I can remember, I'll try to link that down below in the description to an Amazon link where you can go and read that. But I just wanted to comment on one thing from what you were saying about Sir Duncan the Tall becoming a knight. It's actually kind of humorous how that happens. He sort of just lies about it, like he's a squire almost for Sir Arlen Pennytree, who was a hedge knight, which is basically a knight that isn't devoted to one particular kingdom. They kind of just go around and like pick up cases, if you want to say that or whatever. They get paid to fight for whatever. But once he dies, like that's right when the story picks up, and he ends up he's like digging him a grave, and he taking his shield and his armor and stuff. And when he gets to oh man, God, was it the tourney at Ashford where he meets?
It was, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, he gets to the tourney at Ashford, and when he goes to sign up for it, I think he doesn't have enough money, so he has to sell part of his armor to make that money. But then people can tell that his armor doesn't fit him because he's, you know, massive fucking dude. He's actually George announced, I think last year, that Brienne of Tarth, through her lineage, is related to Sir Duncan the Tall, so that's where she gets her heights from. But he's just like a big dude. I don't know. I just go and, like Robert said, just go and check out the books. They're really good. It's you can get I think they're smaller novella, but you can get one, The Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, and it has all three of them. And he's still writing the story, so it's not finished yet. We do know what happens to the younger King Aegon V. We end up finding out what happens to him through like World of Ice and Fire. Well, we don't know their journey completely. And honestly, there's a chance that Sir Dunk made it to Winterfell, and while he was escorting Brendan Rivers to the wall, he like mated with what could have potentially been Old Nan, but I don't want to get too deep in that. But yeah, no, it's just, yeah, just go check that out. It's a really fun read. Did you have anything that you wanted?
No, I'm all good.
All right. So I guess what we could do at this point is sort of make some predictions for Daenerys going into the final season of Game of Thrones. We do know that Jon Snow and Daenerys, and as of yet, I'm trying to think of who can be a secret Targaryen, but as of right now, Jon and Daenerys are the sole two remaining Targaryens. Jon was thought to be a bastard of House Stark, but it turns out he's a legitimate member of House Targaryen. His parents were married, and his true name is Aegon. So, you know, I'm sure we've done our fair share of season 8 predictions, but do you have any bold predictions that you want to make for the future of House Targaryen?
I don't know that it's a bold prediction, but my prediction for the future of House Targaryen is that it does not have a future.
I shots fired.
I cannot see that the way forward for Westeros has got a Targaryen at the helm, because we need to have a break in the wheel, and that is not going to happen with somebody who is sitting there with a huge dragon, or with the potential to be a dragon rider, even if the dragons aren't there. I honestly cannot see it happening. I think Jon, even if he survives, I don't see that he would take the throne. Daenerys, I can't see her surviving whatsoever, because she would make a terrible queen, sorry to say it.
What?
Their child, the only way that I could see it surviving is if their child is brought up by some slightly wiser advisors, sort of like Tyrion perhaps, or someone like that. But I cannot see if what you were saying earlier about this, maybe the way forward being a council or something like that. It is not an absolute monarchy led by a Targaryen, because they are fire, and if ice is going to be pushed back, then so is fire.
Yeah, like you need to have a balance. But as far as you saying Daenerys making a terrible queen, that's just not true. That's just totally not true. Is she rash? Yes. Does she act on her emotions a little bit too fast? Yes. But all of that is learned, and she's gaining experience, right? So she just lost Viserion. I guarantee you that has brought in her fucking reins a little bit. She's not going to be so quick to jump into battle. She's not going to be so quick to go and roast things. She's going to think things through. Every single thing that she loses makes her stronger. Even though she's losing something, it still makes her as a whole stronger because she learns from that, right? So it's like the first couple seasons, she kind of was, you know, a little bit like annoying in the sense that she just was so entitled all the time. But she's deserved that. She's earned that. She's liberated tens of thousands of slaves. She's united a people. She's came over to Westeros, and instead of conquering Westeros, the first thing she does is try to save Westeros. So Daenerys, good sir, would in fact make a wonderful queen, and I would like to ask her to marry me. Emilia Clarke, if you were listening to this right now, do you take? No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, no, I don't know. That's just my. As far as what you're saying about, you know, there not being House Targaryen sitting the Iron Throne, well, no, definitely not. I don't think any one person. I think the Iron Throne is going to get melted by Viserion. Like I see the final scene that we see the Iron Throne is Viserion's coming in through the fucking roof with the Night King on his back, and he just literally roasts the entire Red Keep. And then we're shown liquid metal rolling down away from where the Iron Throne used to sit. Now, that could be because I was a production assistant on that episode during filming for season 8, but I'm just saying, like, it's gonna be, I'm just kidding, but it's gonna be something like that. Like, it's gonna be completely destroyed. And to touch on more of that, like, whole governing body, it could be a representative from each section of Westeros that represents that, if you want to call it a kingdom or whatever, and they sort of like come together and they decide what's right for everyone. I would like to see, you know how Tyrion was talking about the Night's Watch has that, he mentioned it, how to Daenerys, how they have a way of voting in. I would like to see every citizen in the kingdom be able to take part in that vote, like to sort of vote for who they want to be their senator or whatever. But yeah, no, I agree with you that House Targaryen will definitely not be sitting the Iron Throne at the end. As far as Jon, I don't see him wanting to become king at all, but if he realizes that he's the only option, like the other option would be chaos and to like not have a ruler, I think he'd take it. I don't know. What do you think? If he had no other choice?
Well, okay, so just on Daenerys, I was being slightly provocative. I think the truth is somewhere between the two of us. She clearly has, to put it mildly, a temper, but she has some redeeming points as well. I'll give you that. In terms of Jon, yeah, I think his history is of him reluctantly taking power. He had that when he was at the Night's Watch. He didn't put his name forward. Sam did, and he took it because he just he felt that was the right thing to do. Similarly, being made King of the North, he didn't say, "Hey, I want to be King of the North." We had Lyanna Mormont do that. So yes, that's his history. The thing against it that I have is the fact that George R.R. Martin has been very clear. He is not writing a classical fantasy novel, the kind of the high fantasy novel, the trashy things that we've read 100 times before. And there is no trope in fantasy novels that is greater than the poor orphan boy who was brought up in a castle, not realizing that actually they're the heir to the kingdom and the child of prophecy, and they're going to get a magic sword, and they're going to defeat the big baddie, and they're going to end up uniting the kingdoms at the end. That is just, for me, far too cliche for a George R.R. Martin story.
Well, it's not exactly the same as that. So Jon grew up in the castle, yes. But it was everything but that. It's almost worse for him because he can see that life and he knows he'll never be 100% in with it. So it's like, it's almost torture for him in the sense that he's able to watch other people do all these things. And like, as far as he knows, he can't help the fact that he's not Ned's legitimate born son, but he knows that he has the same father of them. And he's like, Ned treats him fairly, but Catelyn, come on, she's a cunt. You know what I mean? So it's like, I feel you in the sense that no, George doesn't want it to be exactly like that. Like the one who was crapped on. It's almost like Merlin, right? Like, or the story of like Sir Arthur, the Disney movie version. I never read the novels and I know there's way more into it, but in the Disney movie, the one from like, I think it was the late 80s or whatever, that movie used to scare the shit. I was just weird. But, in that movie, he's like, you know, he's like a steward, I guess. He's like, he's treated like crap, and then come to find out he's the only one who could pull the sword out of the stone. It's very similar with Jon. It's like he's treated like crap, and then comes to find out he's the only one that can save us from the Long Night. Jon's different than that in the sense that he's earned everything that he has. Every single thing that he has, he's earned. Like, he had the advantage of being born in a higher born house, but not really. He was almost treated like Theon in the sense that he never really felt welcome. Like, I think he was treated better than Theon, but Ned was a fair dude to both of them. It's just, I don't know. I feel like it's like you can get so close to having the good life, but you only get a taste of it. That's like a really terrible experience, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Because like I grew up in a nice part of town, but I didn't have, like, a lot of my friends had, like, they were able to get their cars early on, and like when they did work, they got to spend their money on shit that they wanted to, and like it was different with me. Like, no, I had to go out and get a job, and sort of like, so I relate to Jon with that sense where like you're almost at the point where you can have that life, but you can't. I feel like that's terrible, and that's why Jon will get all this stuff in the end, because he's earned it, he's deserved it, he's died for the kingdom. There's not many of those, like, in that same sense of that story, not many of those characters who are just given everything have actually put out what they're getting back. Like, Jon's put out everything that he's getting back. He's stuck up for people from day one. He's like, I don't know, I guess I could quit, fanboying over Jon Snow, but what do you think, man?
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I like. I mean, he's a bit dull, but I like him. He's a good character. He puts the interests of other people before him way more than he puts his own interest first. I mean, the thing I struggle with, if you're wanting another pushback, and I've got nothing against him, as I say, but he does seem to make some kind of rash decisions. If you just look at the Battle of the Bastards, he ruined a decently good plan there. He was not there. When you look at him being the leader of the Night's Watch, yeah, he might have done it, but did he bring his people with him? Did he bring his men with him? No, they killed him. This was like, he is not actually a great leader. He makes bad decisions and he doesn't bring people with him.
Yeah, but no great leader started out as a great leader. That no one was like from day one, all right, I know what I'm doing, I'm gonna make everything. No, they all make mistakes, but they've learned from their mistakes. The difference is Jon's making stupid, rash mistakes, but they're mistakes that a good person would do. So yeah, he goes outside after dumbass Ollie goes, hey, your Uncle Benjen's outside, come see him, Jon, come see him. You know what I mean? Like, it's because he has a good heart and he trusts his men, and he thinks that, yeah, they hate having wildlings there, but they're ultimately going to open up their doors because they know that we've all seen the White Walkers. These motherfuckers are coming. We need their help. You know what I mean? So I feel like his mistakes are done out of a good place. It's not like mistakes. Some of Daenerys' mistakes were straight up like just a stupid decision. And some of Jon's mistakes are a stupid decision, but for the most part, they come from a good place. And the reason why it's written that way is because they want to show us and make it more believable in the end when they become such a great leader, because we know they've had this insane journey that they've made these massive mistakes on, and they've learned from them. Because you can't be a good leader where you just make mistakes and you're just like, fuck it. You have to be able to pick it up and learn. I don't know. I feel like we could go on for
we could, and he's don't get me wrong, I think he is, as one of the closest things we have to a hero in this story, and I think he is going to be central to achieving the right outcome at the end of all of this. The only thing I doubt is whether A, he would want the Iron Throne, B, whether he would survive in order to get the Iron Throne, and D, if he got there, whether he would actually be as enlightened a leader as we might perhaps think he is.
Hell yeah. That's a good spot to end it, man. I want to thank you so much for joining me. Robert, do you want to tell everybody again real quick where they can find you?
Absolutely. So my name's Robert. My channel is In Deep Geek. Have a look for me on YouTube. I'm also on all the other obvious places, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram as In Deep Geek. And please, if you're interested in either Game of Thrones or Westworld starting this week or next week, please do come and check out my channel. I'll be doing regular Westworld content as well as keeping up the Game of Thrones stuff. So if you're interested in insight and intelligent debate, check out In Deep Geek.
All right, awesome. Hell yeah, man. And those are linked down below in the description, and his Twitter has actually been up here on the screen this entire time, so make sure you go and follow him on the Twitter. I don't know if you do that, but sometimes we run like polls and stuff where you can kind of like contribute and see what, and so it's fun. It's good to get in behind the scenes. So one of the best ways to do that is to follow us on all forms of social media. Mine are linked down below in the description as well. I want to give a quick shout out to every single member of my Patreon family, especially to Terry and to Nancy. You guys are freaking awesome. And, I'm Con of Thrones is coming up. And I actually have a GoFundMe. This is the first time I'm mentioning it in the video, but I have a GoFundMe that's linked down below in the description. And any amount of money that you want to donate would be awesome. I have a deal going on right now with one of my subscribers, Terry, where he's going to match every single dollar that gets put in there up to $500. So even if you're only donating like $2, Terry's gonna match that. So it's awesome. So please go and check that out and help me get to the Con of Thrones in Dallas, Texas, in the dirty South. But yeah, I want to thank you all so much for watching. If you could please slap a like on this video. The like goal is going to be, I'm looking at the camera right now, like you guys can see my face, but you can't. The like goal is going to be 420. Also, if you want to be entered into my contest to win a $100 voice crack Amazon gift card as soon as 420 hits, all you have to do, the winner of which will be selected on 420 rather, all you have to do is like this video, leave a comment down below, make sure you're subscribed, and then turn on your notifications so that way you get alerted every single time I drop a Game of Thrones video throughout this long night. I want to thank Robert so much from Indie Geek for joining us. My name's Mark, and this has been Sir Hunt's Views.